The verdict form is in its proper order. Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the State of Florida versus Charles Adelson, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. So say we all this 6th day of November, 2020.
What if I told you that the difference between freedom and life in prison could come down to 3 words you said on a phone call you thought was private? What if every casual conversation, every reassuring phrase to a loved one, every moment you thought you were being clever was actually building a case against you? What if the way you spoke to your girlfriend, the money you sent to help someone you cared about, the tone of your voice when you were scared, all became evidence that prosecutors would use to paint you as a mastermind of murder? This is the story of a man who believed he was untouchable, a successful dentist who thought his words meant nothing until prosecutors showed a jury they meant everything. It's about a family torn apart, a murder that shook a university community, and a legal battle that would hinge not on smoking guns or dramatic confessions, but on interpretation, on context, on the question of what people really mean when they think no one important is listening. This is a case where intelligence became a liability, where explaining yourself created more problems than staying silent, where the very confidence that had built a successful life became the thing that made a jury believe in guilt. And at the center of it all stands one question that should haunt all of us. In a world where everything we say can be recorded, analyzed, and used against us, how careful do we really need to be? Before we go further into one of the most psychologically gripping cases in recent criminal history, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Dark Trail Files. We dive deep into cases others only scratch the surface of, bringing you details, analysis, and angles you won't find anywhere else. Trust me, you'll want to see where this story goes, and you won't want to miss what comes next on this channel. Now, let's uncover the truth. July 18th, 2014. Tallahassee, Florida. A warm summer morning that would shatter multiple families forever. Dan Markel, a beloved Florida State University law professor, pulled into his garage after dropping his sons at daycare. Moments later, 2 men in a rented Toyota Prius followed him. What happened next was calculated, brutal, and would set off an investigation that would expose secrets powerful people desperately wanted buried. Dan Markel wasn't just any professor. He was brilliant, accomplished, and deeply loved by his students. But his personal life had fractured. His divorce from Wendy Adelson had been bitter, filled with custody battles and deep resentment. When he wanted to move back to South Florida to be near her family, Dan refused. He had custody rights, a career in Tallahassee, and he wasn't about to let his children be taken hundreds of miles away. For the Adelson family, this wasn't just inconvenient. According to prosecutors, it was unacceptable. And at the center of this family stood Charlie Adelson, Wendy's older brother, a successful dentist with a thriving practice and, as investigators would later argue, a willingness to solve problems in the darkest way imaginable. But here's what makes this case psychologically haunting. Charlie Adelson didn't look like someone capable of orchestrating violence. He was educated, wealthy, articulate. He had everything to lose. So the question that would consume this case wasn't just whether he did it, but how someone like him could believe he'd get away with it. The execution was meant to look professional. 2 hitmen, a rental car, a single shot fired through a car window in broad daylight. But investigations into contract killings rarely stay simple, especially when the victim is a prominent law professor whose death immediately raises questions. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, planned, executed with precision. And precision leaves traces. Tallahassee Police Department began piecing together the puzzle immediately. Surveillance footage from a neighborhood. The rental car, a silver Toyota Prius. Unusual choice for hired killers, but memorable enough that witnesses noticed it. Traffic cameras tracked its route. Financial records showed where it was rented, who rented it, and where they came from. The investigation led detectives to South Florida, to Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera, two men with criminal backgrounds. These weren't sophisticated professional hitmen. They were local criminals recruited for a job, making them vulnerable to pressure, to plea deals, to the kind of cooperation that breaks cases wide open. Luis Rivera broke first. Facing life in prison, he made the calculation many defendants make. He could stay loyal and spend his life behind bars, or he could talk and potentially see freedom someday. He chose to talk, and when he did, he opened the door investigators desperately needed. Who paid for this? The answer led to Catherine Magbanua, and that's where this case shifted to something far more complex, involving prominent families, questions of conspiracy, and debates about the meaning of words. Catherine wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was a mother, working various jobs, involved with Charlie Adelson in what appeared normal. She also had connections to Sigfredo Garcia, sharing children with him. And according to prosecutors, she became the crucial intermediary, the bridge between Charlie's world and Garcia's world of violence for hire. The prosecution would argue that Catherine received money from Charlie, money that made its way to Garcia and Rivera for the hit. But proving that wasn't straightforward. Money changes hands between romantic partners constantly. The question wasn't whether money was transferred, it was why. That's where the investigation became a deep dive into context, patterns, and meaning behind seemingly innocent transactions. Investigators subpoenaed bank records, tracked every payment Charlie made to Catherine, examined timing, amounts, frequency. They compared transactions to key dates in the murder plot and subsequent investigation. What they found was a pattern that, to them, suggested something more than romantic generosity. For years, Charlie Adelson maintained his innocence with remarkable consistency. He wasn't involved. He didn't know anything about any plot. He was just a dentist living his life, dating Catherine, being generous with money. His explanations were consistent. He had answers for everything. On the surface, those answers seemed plausible enough to create reasonable doubt. But investigators kept digging. Phone records going back years. Bank statements analyzed by forensic accountants. Witnesses interviewed, some reluctant to talk. They built timelines showing who was where, when, who was talking to whom. What they found wasn't a smoking gun, wasn't a recorded confession. What they found was something more subtle, more dependent on interpretation and context. They found patterns. Money flowing at specific times corresponding with events. Conversations that seemed innocent until you considered when they occurred. Behavior that made sense if you believed Charlie's explanations, but looked different through the lens of conspiracy. And then came the phone calls, the recordings that would become the backbone of the prosecution's case, and the source of endless debate about interpretation, intent, and the power of context to transform innocent words into evidence of conspiracy. In 2016, investigators made a bold move. They sent an undercover FBI agent posing as a member of a criminal organization to call Charlie. What he said in that conversation would haunt him for years. Listen to how he responds when he thinks danger is closing in. That undercover call was a turning point, not because Charlie confessed, but because of how he reacted, what he said, and what he didn't say. The call came in 2016, roughly 2 years after Dan Markel's murder. Garcia and Rivera had been arrested. Catherine was a person of interest. The net was closing, but prosecutors needed more, something connecting Charlie directly to the conspiracy. So they made a bold move. An undercover FBI agent, posing as a member of a criminal organization called Charlie. The premise was psychologically sophisticated. The caller suggested they represented people connected to the murder, concerned about being exposed, watching, expecting certain things with potential consequences. It was a test. How would an innocent person react? Probably with confusion, anger, fear, but also clear statements of innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't involved. You have the wrong person. That's what innocent people tend to say. But that's not what Charlie did, according to prosecutors. He didn't sound confused. According to the prosecution's interpretation, he sounded like someone who understood exactly what was being referenced, someone trying to navigate a recognized threat, speaking carefully because he knew the implications. Charlie later explained differently, revealing the entire challenge of this case. He was scared. He thought he was being extorted by dangerous people. He was protecting himself and his family. He spoke vaguely because he didn't know who he was talking to, trying to avoid making things worse. Any reasonable person confronted by what sounded like criminals would be cautious. And that explanation makes sense. Fear makes people speak carefully. Not knowing who you're talking to can lead to vague responses. The question is whether that fear came from being an innocent person threatened by criminals or from being a guilty person who recognizes conspiracy was unraveling. This is where the case becomes a psychological chess match. Charlie Adelson is smart, articulate. Throughout this investigation and trial, he walked a tightrope between defending himself and revealing too much. Every word chosen carefully. Every explanation had to account for evidence without admitting guilt. Every reaction had to seem innocent while being believable to people actively looking for deception. The undercover call became central evidence. Prosecutors would play it for the jury, asking them to listen not just to what Charlie said, but how he said it. They'd point to specific phrases, tones, moments where responses suggested knowledge rather than confusion. They'd argue his entire demeanor was someone managing a crisis, not someone genuinely confused. Defense attorneys would counter that prosecution was reading too much into fear and caution, taking normal reactions to frightening situations and twisting them into evidence of guilt. They'd argue hindsight bias was at play, that knowing what we know now makes the call seem more significant than it was, that an innocent person might have reacted exactly the same way. Who was right? The jury would decide. But the call set the tone for what this case would become. A battle over the meaning of words, interpretation of behavior, whether context can transform innocent explanations into evidence of conspiracy. One of the most fascinating and controversial aspects of the prosecution's case was their theory about coded language. And this is where the trial became less about hard evidence and more about interpretation, about reading between the lines, about understanding what people mean versus what they say. The prosecution argued that Charlie and others involved in this conspiracy were too smart to speak directly about the crime. They knew phones could be tapped. They knew conversations could be recorded. They knew that saying, "I hired someone to commit violence," would be immediate evidence of guilt. So according to prosecutors, they developed a different way of communicating, using seemingly innocent phrases that, in context, carried much darker meanings. Conversations about the problem being solved could mean anything in isolation. A problem at work, a family issue, a logistical challenge. But when that phrase appears in a conversation shortly after Dan Markel's death, when it's between people connected to the case, when it aligns with other evidence, does it take on a different meaning? The prosecution believed it did. References to payments framed as loans or gifts are equally ambiguous. People in relationships exchange money all the time. A boyfriend helps a girlfriend financially. That's normal, even expected in some relationships. But what if those payments happen at specific times, in specific amounts, that seemed to correspond with milestones in the murder plot? What if the timing is just a bit too convenient? Discussions about Catherine needing money could absolutely be innocent. Single mothers often need financial help. Charlie was in a relationship with her. He had means. Helping her make sense. But prosecutors argued this wasn't charitable giving. They said it was payment for her role as a go-between, compensation for the risk she was taking, money that would flow through her to the actual killers. Here's what makes this so psychologically gripping and legally complex. How do you prove intent through words that sound normal? How do you convince a jury that "I'm helping someone out" actually means "I'm paying for a crime" without sounding like you're reaching, like you're constructing a narrative out of thin air? The prosecution strategy was context, context, context. They couldn't prove the meaning of individual phrases, but they could show patterns. They could display timelines. They could demonstrate that when you put all these conversations together, when you follow the money trail, when you track who was talking to whom, and when the innocent explanations start requiring more and more coincidences to believe. They used financial records to show money moving from Charlie to Catherine, and then from Catherine to Garcia, in patterns that seemed to align with the investigation and arrests. They used phone records to show who was communicating with whom at critical moments. They built a web of connections that, piece by piece, suggested coordination rather than coincidence. But Charlie had explanations for everything. He always had explanations. And that confidence, that ability to provide reasonable-sounding answers for every question, became both his shield and his potential vulnerability. Because the more you explain, the more details you provide, the more your story needs to remain perfectly consistent. One contradiction, one moment where the explanation doesn't quite fit with other established facts, and the entire narrative can collapse under its own weight. Because here's the thing, every time you explain something, you're creating a story. And if any part doesn't hold up, the whole narrative collapses. Prosecutors were counting on that. You cannot understand this case without understanding the Adelson family dynamic. This wasn't just about one person making one decision. According to prosecutors, this was about a family that functioned as a unit, protecting each other above all else, potentially viewing Dan Markel not as a person, but as an obstacle to having Wendy and her children close in South Florida. The Adelson family was close-knit, successful, prominent in their South Florida community. Harvey built a life of comfort and success. Donna was a devoted mother who wanted her family near, who couldn't accept the distance from her grandchildren. Charlie was the successful dentist. Wendy was the accomplished law professor. From the outside, they looked like the American success story. But the divorce between Wendy and Dan created a fracture the family, according to prosecution, couldn't accept. Dan's refusal to allow Wendy to relocate with the children wasn't just inconvenient. In the prosecution's narrative, it was unacceptable to a family used to getting what they wanted, used to solving problems, used to being in control. Donna Adelson became a key figure. Understanding her role requires understanding the psychology of a mother who, prosecutors alleged, might have been willing to do anything to have her daughter and grandchildren close. Phone records, conversations, behavior patterns all suggested to investigators that Donna wasn't just aware of the plot. She may have been instrumental in planning it. Evidence against Donna included recorded conversations, financial transactions, and witness testimony painting a picture of deep involvement. Her arrest came years after the murder, after Charlie's conviction, suggesting prosecutors believed this conspiracy went deeper than one person, that it was truly a family affair. Harvey Adelson presented a more complicated picture. He was investigated extensively, but prosecutors never felt they had enough evidence to charge him. Was he truly unaware? Did he know but look away? Or was he deliberately kept in the dark? These questions remain unanswered. Harvey has maintained no knowledge of any plot. And then there was Wendy, perhaps the most debated aspect of the entire investigation. She was Dan's ex-wife. She stood to benefit from his death through custody and freedom to move back to South Florida. She had motive, opportunity to provide information about Dan's schedule, and she was a member of the Adelson family at the center of the conspiracy. But Wendy was never charged. Prosecutors investigated thoroughly, interviewed her multiple times, analyzed her phone records and behavior, ultimately concluding they didn't have evidence strong enough for charges. Wendy has consistently maintained she had no knowledge of any plot, that she was horrified by his murder, that she's as much a victim as anyone. Public opinion on Wendy remains deeply divided. Some believe lack of charges proves innocence, that she was caught in a nightmare created by her family without her knowledge. Others point to circumstantial details, her behavior before and after the murder, family connections as evidence she must have known something, even if prosecutors couldn't prove it beyond reasonable doubt. What emerges is a picture of a family that, whether through active conspiracy or willful ignorance, became entangled in something that destroyed them from within. The close bonds that once defined them became the very thing that led to their downfall. The loyalty that might have seemed admirable became, in prosecution's narrative, a willingness to cross moral and legal lines. Charlie Adelson, as the son with means and connections, as someone who cared deeply about his sister and wanted her happy, allegedly found himself in a position where he believed he could solve the family's problem. And that belief, that confidence he could make this happen without consequences, defines much of what followed. When Charlie finally took the stand, the courtroom went silent. This was his chance to tell his side, to explain everything in his own words. Watch how he describes his relationship to the case, his knowledge of events, and listen for what he says and what he carefully avoids saying.
Did you have any input on the decision to change the boys' names from Markel to Adelson?
Absolutely not.
Do you and Donna have to protect Wendy?
No.
Does Wendy appreciate everything you and Donna do for her?
You got to ask her. I mean, she's my sister. I love her. I try to give her my best advice I can. And if I care about her, and I give her my advice, whether she takes it or not, is up to her. She's a grown woman.
Let me ask it another way. Do you feel, or isn't it true that you don't feel, that Wendy appreciates everything you and Donna do for her?
My sister had no idea what I've been through in the last, God knows how many years, and what I wake up worrying, am I going to get killed? Am I going to get arrested? And she knows none of it. She's just going around her life, and I had somewhat of an innate anger towards her. You know, probably unjust because she didn't know what happened. But yeah, I was upset.
And weren't you saying on the wire that she doesn't appreciate what you and Donna have done for her?
I don't know if I said that she doesn't appreciate what I've done for her, because I never did anything for her.
Okay, so that was my next question. What have you done for her? Nothing?
Other than give her advice and care about her, be a big brother that loves her.
Would you say Wendy's a little bit spoiled?
In some regards, I mean, she gets a lot of help, for sure.
Is she a little less savvy about how the world works than you are?
I don't know. I mean, you got to ask her.
Could you trust Wendy with a secret that could ruin your life?
It's not a secret. It's something that would get me killed, so I didn't want to tell her.
Can we agree that she obviously knew something about this crime?
She found out when she came to court. I never told her anything.
I'm talking about the murder of Dan Markel. She knew something, right? I mean, it's not a coincidence she went to the crime scene, is it?
You're talking about the route that she took that day?
I'm talking about her pulling up to the crime scene tape.
She never went to the crime scene. She was going to buy a bottle of liquor that, coincidentally, the person sent her a stock the bar party for buy a bottle of Bullet bourbon that she was going to pick up. She wasn't driving to a crime scene, and I think she made that clear too. Nobody knew a murder was taking place.
She pulled up to the crime scene tape, Dr. Adelson.
She didn't pull up to the crime scene tape. She was driving down the street and then had to make a U-turn. It was blocked off. But she wasn't going to.
It's like she couldn't help herself.
Nobody knew a murder was going to take place.
She exposed you all to some degree by those actions, didn't she?
No, not at all.
And then she threw you under the bus in her interview, didn't she?
Nobody knew a murder was going to take place.
She knew her husband had just been shot, and they were asking her who would want him dead, and she said your name. Are you mad about that?
No, she said a lot of people's names.
Well, she
Not at
said
all.
yours in the first 25 pages of a 5-hour interview. Isn't that true?
I wasn't there for the interview.
But you've reviewed it in preparation for your trial, haven't you?
I actually don't know if I've seen her interview.
There was a lot of questions of you about, didn't you do this murder with Wendy? Doesn't the state think you did this murder with Wendy? Are you familiar with your charges in this case?
Yes, I'm very familiar with my
All right.
charges.
And who are you alleged to have done this murder with?
I'm alleged to have done this murder with my sister, my mom, and my dad.
Would it refresh your recollection to review a copy of the indictment in this case?
I'm a slow reader, but I could read it if you want.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
This is the official charging document in your case, Dr. Adelson. What does it say in reference to who you are alleged to have committed the murder with?
This is, what day is this? 2022. Oh, they think I did a murder with Katie.
Catherine Magbanua.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Give me a minute, I'll read. They got Luis Rivera in here. They got Sigfredo Garcia.
As being alleged to have committed the murder with you?
Did I read it too quick?
Take your time. Should just be at the very top of each charge. On or about July 18th, 2014, did unlawfully.
Okay. Yeah, Katie. Catherine.
Okay. Are you mad that Wendy hasn't been charged and you have?
No, I'm mad that I got charged for a crime that I didn't commit.
Do you have any innate anger with Wendy over that fact?
No, not at all.
Are you pissed that she told all that stuff to Jeff Lacoste?
I don't think she said that to Jeff, but I wasn't there.
How did Lacoste know about the celebration dinner?
That we went out to dinner. She got sick, so she may have told someone that she threw up.
And then what, he just added the part about you referring to it as a celebration?
I never referred to it as a celebration dinner. I picked my sister up. I said, where do you want to go to eat? She said she wanted pizza or sushi. I said, I know a great sushi place. We went there. We didn't have reservations. We ended up sitting at the bar for an hour waiting for our table. And she had 2 drinks and got sick.
She vomited on the dinner table. Or at the dinner table.
Yeah, she got her to the bathroom. But yeah, she doesn't drink alcohol. So those 2 drinks, and I think on an empty stomach, I think she got really sick. But there was no celebration dinner. It was the first time that she actually really left the house since she got back from Tallahassee. She was devastated.
Did you say something to her about the murder of Dan Markel right before she vomited?
Absolutely not.
Do you remember what you said right before she vomited?
She was I think she said, I don't feel well. And I say, oh no. And then she threw up.
Before that?
No, I think I said, oh no. And then she threw up.
Before she announced that she was going to be ill.
Right.
Do you remember what the conversation was?
Just how's the food? How's your? I mean, we were probably about halfway through dinner. If you look at the timetable, we weren't there long.
Why did you brag to Jeffrey Lacoste about your connection to the Cuban criminal element?
Never said that to Jeff Lacoste.
So he's making that up?
If he said it, I never said it.
Well, you were in here when he said it, weren't you?
I heard him say it, yeah. But I never said that to him.
On one of these calls, and it's in the context of talking about Dave and Wendy's relationship with Dave, you tell your mom that you've already gone above and beyond for Wendy. Was that a reference to having her ex murdered?
No, that's me getting tired of this Dave stuff. I mean, Dave's a great guy. I mean, everyone who meets him likes him. He's not only super successful, but he's very low-key, like T-shirts and jeans kind of guy. And he loved my sister's kids. I mean, if you listen to The Wire, the point I was making is not how successful he is. The point I was making is that my nephews farted on him, and he thought it was funny and didn't bother him. And he also has 3 young kids, the same ages as my sister's 2 young kids. They actually met in line when my sister was registering the kids for school, and it was they've been friends for years. So I thought it was a great opportunity for my sister to have a great guy in her life. And I was getting sick and tired of Dave calls, and The Wire started in April. My sister's birthday's in April, Dave's birthday's in April, so you got a ton of Dave chatter on this case. But believe me, I'd go crazy if I was talking about Dave like this all year long.
So that's a no. You did not reference having her ex murdered
Absolutely not.
when you said
No.
you've already gone above and beyond.
No, that was
when
me
you-
getting sick of dealing with the Dave stuff. As great of a guy as he is, I was still getting sick of it.
When the $1 million offer was conceived, do you recall whose idea that was?
My parents.
Why was the relocation worth $1 million?
Well, it was actually I was going to pay a third, so I only looked at it as that way. Why was it worth it?
That's the question.
Because it was going to help my sister out, and it was going to give her a good opportunity for a good job down here, and she was going to be around family, and family's important, so that's why.
Isn't it true that financially you came out ahead on this deal as opposed to if you had coughed up the third of the $1 million offer?
How in the world did I come up ahead? This is the craziest thing.
Financially, you paid $138,000, then you paid $2,000 a month plus the $1,000 payroll amount. You're still about over $100,000 ahead financially than if you had coughed up the $333K.
No, I would have been better off paying. And first of all, I never paid for murders. This is a crazy question, but paying $3,000 a month for life is not anything anybody wants to do.
I didn't say anything about paying for a murder. I said you paid $138,000, which you did.
I got extorted for $330,000.
Taking the stand in your own defense is always a gamble. You get to tell your story directly, but you also open yourself to cross-examination, and prosecutors have been waiting for this moment. Charlie's testimony was confident, almost defiant. He painted himself as a victim of circumstances. He acknowledged his relationship with Catherine, explained the money as generosity, described the undercover call as a terrifying moment where he feared for his life. But under cross-examination, cracks started to show. Not dramatic confessions, but small inconsistencies, moments where his explanations required the jury to believe increasingly unlikely coincidences. The prosecution pressed him on timelines, on specific conversations, on why certain choices made sense if he had nothing to hide. The psychological trap. The more Charlie explained, the more he had to keep track of. Every answer became part of a larger narrative that had to remain consistent. The tension in the courtroom reached its peak during cross-examination. When prosecutors accused him of using coded language to hide his involvement, Charlie didn't stay calm. Watch this moment where frustration breaks through his carefully maintained composure.
I was approached by another extortionist today. Does she say that?
No, she's talking very carefully.
And you say carefully, but isn't carefully the same thing as code?
No, they're two totally separate things. You know the difference?
You weren't really giving her money for a TV, were you?
Giving her money for a TV.
This TV is probably going to be about $5. I
Okay.
need you to bring cash tonight.
I wish she picked another object on planet Earth other than TV. But TV is code for absolutely nothing. There is no code in this case involving TV, and you keep circling and circling and circling TV, you're wrong.
Is it a coincidence that the repair of the TV that you bought Wendy as a divorce gift because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman is your sister's alibi for the murder, and then your mom brings up TV first call on the wire?
It's not an alibi for a murder. She had a broken TV. You got to ask Lincoln who threw the remote at the TV.
Was it a coincidence? Is the TV thing a coincidence? That's what I hear you say.
Oh, that the repairman was there that day?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that is a coincidence for sure. There's a
And
couple
all
of
the-
coincidences in this case.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I said there's a couple of coincidences in this case. I mean, she had people send her an email to go buy a bottle of Bullet bourbon for their Stock the Bar party, and she was driving to a liquor store to buy a bottle of Bullet bourbon on that day, at that time, and her friend sent the email, and you have the email and evidence. Like, is that a coincidence? Yeah, coincidences happen.
And the "you might not be the right Katie" talk, that doesn't seem to really fit with your theory of the case, does it? What was your explanation for that? Why you kept saying you might not be the right Katie? I mean, she's definitely the right Katie, right?
Absolutely. She knew it was. I was implying it was her. I was just trying to say, I'm not setting you up, but I need your help.
On call B, you call your mom back and you say, you probe her a little bit, and ultimately you say, you think someone's trying to blackmail you? That's crazy. Why does it sound like this is something that's new and unfathomable to you at that moment?
Well, because I wasn't even following what my mom was talking about on the first call. And on the second call, when she shocked me when she said that. And I'd been extorted before, and her saying to bring cash, everything just didn't sound right.
Could we play clip 4, please? This is from Dolce.
What, sorry, from what?
Clip 4 from Dolce.
Okay.
Even if they had any evidence, the first words out of your mouth on this clip, even if they had any evidence. No. Strike. The quote is, if they had any evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport. And I know you already testified about this, but does an innocent person say, if they had any evidence?
Right. Katie's saying it's the police, and I'm saying that we're innocent. They're not going to have any evidence to show we were part of something that we were part of. If we had any part of this, we'd be going to the airport right now. And I
Isn't
still say
it
the
true,
same
doctor,
thing.
that they're not going to have any evidence because you were careful?
No, because we weren't a part of this.
You were smart.
No, we weren't a part of this.
You walled yourself off
I
from
was
the
sure
killers.
they're not going to have evidence to show I did something I didn't do. So we're not running to the airport.
And you're untouchable, right?
No, we didn't do a murder. I wasn't part of a murder. There's no reason to run to the airport.
In the next clip, you're discussing what's going to happen if this person that did the bump goes to the police. And you're going through all these scenarios, these possibilities.
Wait, if he goes to the police?
Yeah, the blackmailer goes to the police. They're going to say, where's the weapon? And he's not going to know. He's just going to have hearsay, basically. Someone told me they did it. And it's not going to be enough to get the investigation anywhere. Why are you thinking through the possibility of the blackmailer going to the cops if the blackmailer doesn't have any dirt on you to take to the cops?
I wasn't thinking about the blackmailer. What I was trying to say is I don't know anything about Sigfredo. I don't know anything about this crime. I was trying to tell her that I'm harmless. I don't have any knowledge of what went on. Like, the last thing I wanted is that now that she's saying it's the police, is someone to come and kill me and think I'm some kind of loose end. So that's why I'm saying that.
But that's not what you're saying. You're saying if this is a person that Luis Rivera ran his mouth to and they go to the police, it's going to be worth zero because they're not going to know anything other than, hey, my brother told me this.
I don't know if I was saying with someone who knows Luis Rivera. I was trying to make a point that I don't know anything.
And then you suggest what they would have to do is get him to wear a wire and get the person to confess, and that's probably what this could be, an effort to do, right?
Well, they're thinking that we were part of a murder. So this was the same thing I said before, is that this is their theory. So this is a police tactic, and it could be either a bad guy or the police, and this is how they're pursuing it.
Exactly. So as long as you keep your mouth shut, you can get away with murder, right?
No, not at all.
Isn't that
We
what you
didn't- we
told
didn't do no
Ryan
murder.
Fitzpatrick?
No, Ryan Fitzpatrick is someone who stole over $500,000 from me.
That's not my question, sir.
Sorry.
Did you say that to Ryan
No,
Fitzpatrick?
never. Never at all.
Why do you go into so much detail about rental car examples? Let's start with, strike that. Can you agree that the Prius, you knew that the police were looking for a Prius at the time you met at this Dolce Vita restaurant?
I think it had been released at that time.
All right, and you heard the recording. You're arguing. Let's play the clip. This is going to be clip. I think let's play 7 and 8, please. Dolce.
Because the fact is like, even if, let's say, you just got in my car, and then I go ahead and I get in the car, and then I go, and you're dating in the car, I go, yeah, she was in my car, and he got out, and she did this horrible crime. Okay, they come and they get the DNA in the car, and they go, yep, he was in my car. He sat in the car for 2 minutes, got out of the AC, and then got out of the car. He had nothing to do with you guys broken me. Outside of that, there's no evidence. Okay? You know, if you have a car and you can link this person to renting that car that you okay. But you have to prove that they were also driving that day too, and rented it and lent it to a friend. What if you rented a car and hey, Katie, can I borrow it for the weekend? I'll bring it back on Tuesday. You go, yeah, sure. So you rented a car. You've been in that car. I drive into fucking Orlando. I rob McDonald's in Orlando. I come back and I go, here's the keys, Katie. And you go, okay, thanks. Yeah, you rented it, but what if you were fucking out all weekend and you didn't know I took your car? I did something and I brought it back. Okay. My point is, I don't have any knowledge of it. Evidently, this person is either pretending to or does. I don't want someone paying business. Here. Okay.
Sounds like you're saying even if they track down the Prius, even if there's DNA or fingerprints in the Prius, meaning like they can link someone to the Prius, that's not going to be enough evidence to make any arrests in this case. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. What I'm doing is I'm restating.
You've answered my question.
Can I give you an
On redirect, you'll have an opportunity.
Well,
My question was.
One moment.
My question
We're not
was-
just wildly arguing. Mr. Adelson, please answer the question.
okay.
I can just ask you a yes or no question.
Please allow me to
and you're-
answer your question.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Knock yourself out.
What I was saying to Katie is that the information she had just told me in the car about Sigfredo not being there when the crime was committed, she told me that Sigfredo was high on drugs at the hotel and that Luis had rented a car and that he's the one who killed Dan. And I'm restating to her that I don't have any knowledge of what went on, and that all I know is that Sigfredo wasn't even there when this happened. So that's what I'm restating to her.
That Sigfredo can't be caught even if he's connected to the crime, to the car?
I know that Sigfredo wasn't the one who killed Dan.
Okay.
There's a pattern in high-profile criminal cases where intelligent defendants become their own worst enemies. They believe they're smarter than investigators, smarter than prosecutors, smart enough to explain their way out of anything. And for a while, that confidence serves them well. But there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And Charlie Adelson's courtroom demeanor became a topic of intense discussion among legal observers and the public. When he blasted the prosecutor, when he showed frustration at being questioned, when he pushed back against implications of guilt, was that righteous anger from an innocent man being falsely accused? Or was it someone whose careful planning was being dissected? Someone who couldn't believe that despite all his intelligence, the walls were closing in? Body language experts analyzed his posture, his expressions. Legal analysts debated whether his confrontational moments helped or hurt. Trial watchers noticed subtle shifts, how he seemed confident early in proceedings, but as evidence mounted, something changed. The confidence didn't disappear, but it became tinged with something else. Frustration, or the realization this wasn't going as expected. There were moments where Charlie seemed to forget he wasn't in control. He would correct prosecutors on minor points, argue about interpretations, push back on characterizations. For someone maintaining innocence, this made sense. But from another perspective, it looked like someone who couldn't let go of being right, who couldn't resist showing he was smarter than those trying to convict him. This psychological dynamic plays out in many trials, but it's particularly striking with educated, successful defendants. There's an expectation of control, a lifetime of being the smartest in the room. But a criminal trial isn't a problem you solve through being smart. It's a process where the jury holds all power, and your fate depends not on being right, but on being believed. The prosecution seemed to use this strategically. They would make statements Charlie felt compelled to correct, characterize actions provoking responses. Each time he responded, each flash of anger or frustration, they had another piece of evidence about his character, temperament, his need to control the narrative. But ultimately, what mattered was how the jury perceived these moments. Did they see someone understandably frustrated at being accused of murder? Or did they see someone whose mask was slipping, whose confidence revealed the arrogance of someone who thought they were too smart to get caught? Because everything in this trial was building toward one question. Would the jury believe all these coincidences, connections, conversations were innocent? Or would they see what prosecutors wanted them to see? One of the most emotionally charged moments came when Charlie was asked about learning of Dan Markel's death. His recollection of that day, how he heard the news, what he felt, became a crucial piece of the narrative. Listen to how he describes those moments.
When you get to the house, you said you called Katie after your shower. Why did you call her?
To see if she was still planning on coming over and what time she was going to be there, because it was already like 10:15.
And did she come to your house that night?
Yeah, she said she was going to be leaving shortly, and I think I even said either text me or call me when you're on your way.
Did she actually come to your house that evening?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Around what time did she arrive?
She got there about 11 o'clock.
What happened when she arrived?
When she arrived to my house, she came in through the garage, entered into the kitchen from the side door like she always does, and she just looked panicked and upset. I mean, she walked straight in and gives me this big, tight hug and asked me, like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just a horrible day." But she looked more upset than I've ever seen her. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Just come sit down. I need to talk to you."
Where did you go?
We walked into the living room.
And what happened when you got to the living room?
We sat down on the couch, and she started to talk to me. And she said, "Listen, this is all my fault, but I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer."
What did you say?
I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "My friend killed Dan, and he wants to be paid $1/3 $1 million."
How did you react?
I was like, "What did you just say?" And she's like, "My friend killed Dan, and he wants you to pay $1/3 $1 million."
What happened next?
I stood up, and I started cursing it. I'm like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "No." I'm like, who did this? Who's your friend that did this?" And she's like, "I don't want to say. I can't say." And I said, who was it? And she just kept saying, "I'm not going to tell you." And I was like, was it Sigfredo? And she's like, "No, I'm not telling you." And I just walked in my bedroom and sat down on the edge of my bed.
What happened when you got in the bedroom?
She came into the bedroom, followed after me. She sat down next to me. She started telling me, like, "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault, but I didn't know any of this was going to happen." And I'm like, Katie, I'm not going to be part of this shit. Like, I'm not going to be part of paying for a murder. This is insane.
After weeks of testimony, hundreds of pieces of evidence, phone calls played and replayed until every juror could probably recite them from memory, witnesses cross-examined and re-examined, expert testimony about phone records and financial transactions, it all came down to closing arguments. This was the prosecution's final chance to tie everything together, to take all the disparate pieces of evidence and weave them into a coherent narrative that would convince 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt. The lead prosecutor stood before the jury knowing that they had no confession, no murder weapon with Charlie's fingerprints, no witness who could say, "I was there when Charlie hired these men to kill Dan Markel." What they had was circumstantial evidence, a web of connections, financial transactions, phone calls, behaviors that, individually, might mean nothing, but together, they argued, told an unmistakable story of conspiracy and guilt. Closing arguments in circumstantial cases require a delicate balance. Push too hard and you risk seeming desperate, like you're trying to create guilt where none exists. Be too cautious and you risk leaving jurors unconvinced, thinking maybe there's reasonable doubt after all. The prosecution had to walk that line carefully, building their case piece by piece, showing how each element connected to the next, creating a picture that would be impossible to ignore. The lead prosecutor had been building toward this moment throughout the entire trial. Watch as they lay out the case, piece by piece, connecting dots and challenging the jury to see the pattern they'd been presenting.
In jury selection, we talked about the burden of proof and how it was my burden to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt through evidence. And generally speaking, the defense's job is to poke holes in the evidence and argue that it falls short of meeting that high burden. And we also learned at jury selection that the defense does not have to prove anything. But sometimes if the law enforcement investigation is so thorough and so compelling that there's really no way to poke holes in the evidence, he has to basically admit his own words, his own text messages. That stuff is undeniable, right? And those things prove that he was in cahoots with Catherine McBanois in 2013, through the murder in 2014, and all the way up until her arrest in October of 2016. He knows he can't deny that he paid the killers because of this bizarre practice he had of stapling his money. So sometimes when a defendant can't attack the facts or the law, they instead try to explain it away by saying, you can't trust what you're seeing. It's not what it appears to be. It's actually something else entirely. Often, as in this case, the individual explanation, so when you zoom in on one piece of evidence with its attached explanation, can be like, maybe. But when you zoom out and you add all these things together, this explanation, this explanation, this explanation, this coincidence, and this coincidence, and this coincidence, it starts making less and less sense. It starts being less and less reasonable. And when you zoom out from the defense's theory, it's really unreasonable, right? Because to find it reasonable, you have to buy a lot of things that he's selling. The most obvious of which is that because Sigfredo Garcia hated him, he and Rivera traveled to Tallahassee twice to kill someone he hated in hopes that he would give them money for it on the back end. Please think about that. To hit this defendant where it hurts, these two dudes with no connection at all to Dan Markel and without 2 nickels to rub together, rented a car and paid for gas to come to Tallahassee and stay in a hotel twice in order to kill someone that this defendant hated. To harm him. And for what? To maybe get money. Maybe he just turns him in for murder. Why not just kill and rob him if what you're after is money and there's no hired hit? Why not just kill and rob him if your motive is, we hate him? Then the bad guys don't even have any contact with him, according to his own story. They didn't threaten him, they did not beat him into submission. Instead, they sent his own girlfriend to extort him on their behalf. And without any actual contact from the bad guys, the defendant just opened up his safe and handed over his beloved money that he had saved his entire life since he was a child. He just handed it over. Take it all. And when that amount wasn't sufficient, these stone-cold murdering gangsters let the defendant go on a payment plan to give him the rest of the money. They let Catherine McBanois skim off the top each month. And never, over the next 2 years that he was being extorted monthly, these gangsters, remember that money doesn't go to the principal, that $3,000 a month. They never show up to demand the remaining $195,000 that this defendant has agreed to pay them. Then, you also need to find reasonable that over the 2 years of this supposed extortion layaway plan, that the defendant continued to do what? Send these kissy faces and love texts to Catherine McBanois. He's sending these messages to a woman who got him into this mess, and he says he didn't suspect she was involved. What? What do we know about this man? He didn't suspect she was involved. She's taking the money. He's never even heard from the bad guys. He didn't see it that way, that she got him into this mess. They grew closer after she began extorting him for $3,000 a month. Meanwhile, the defendant and Catherine McBanois break up. She continues to maintain her direct and indirect contact with Sigfredo Garcia, the man who's extorting him, the man who murdered his former brother-in-law in cold blood. But he sees her as a friend. The kissy faces and the I love yous continue. Even after Catherine McBanois got back together with the man who executed Dan Markel, the father of his young nephews, and a guy who's actively extorting him, this defendant continued to reach out to her over and over again to offer her favors and gifts, including a birthday gift for Garcia, and to tell her he loves her and how lucky he is to have her in his life. Lucky? Next, to find a reasonable doubt here, you have to find it reasonable that the defendant never texted or talked about this first layer of extortion. Why? According to him, because Catherine McBanois said, let's never talk about this. So they didn't. Then you have to believe he never reported or revealed this information to law enforcement out of fear of the gangsters. And finally, you have to believe that this living in fear of death by gang members over 2 years didn't cause a change in his general demeanor that his friends noticed, but later the bump from law enforcement did. He says that's because, well, I became worried that I might be falsely arrested. So I wasn't a hot mess when I was being extorted by gang members and threatened to be killed and my whole family killed. But I became a hot mess when I started to get worried that the cops might be getting closer. And I have no real way of knowing if all this stuff sounds ridiculous to you, if it sounds reasonable to you, or if y'all just heard so much stuff that you're totally confused and can't even remember what the evidence in the case showed. But they only need to get one of you confused enough to derail this whole thing, right? So I've got to go through each thing with you. Your verdict has to be unanimous. So I want to go through the testimony, I want to review the evidence, And I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this multitude of explanations the defense has offered in an effort to really turn each piece of evidence on its head. This is Dan Markel. He is the victim in this case. A brilliant lawyer, a funny guy, a son, a colleague, a brother, a mentor, and a friend. But most of all, a father. A dedicated and loving father whose downfall was brought about by the fact that his number one priority was maximizing his access to those two little boys in the wake of a bitter divorce from their mother. And despite the defense's efforts to characterize their client as the real victim here, Dan Markel remains the only victim in this case. The only thing he was guilty of is fighting like hell for those kids. And he lost. He didn't lose in court, but he lost. This is what he looked like before this defendant hired a hitman to kill him. And this is what he looked like afterwards. The evidence has shown that on July 18th, 2014, this brilliant man was gunned down in broad daylight in the driveway of his own home. His horrific death ultimately set police down two separate paths following the two most promising leads they had. The first was to chase down that Prius that Mr. Geiger saw fleeing the crime scene. And we'll examine those efforts in detail. The second path was to ask, as we would in any murder investigation, who might want to have done this? Who would want Dan Markel dead?
The prosecution's strategy was methodical. They didn't need Charlie to have pulled the trigger. They needed to prove conspiracy, that he was part of a plan, that he facilitated it through money, through Catherine. They walked the jury through the timeline. Dan was killed. Money flowed to Catherine. Catherine connected to Garcia. Garcia and Rivera committed the crime. Charlie, they argued, was the source. They addressed his explanations. Why those amounts? Why that timing? They asked, how many coincidences are too many? They played the phone calls again, asking the jury to listen to tone, context, underlying meaning. The phone calls between Charlie and Catherine became critical evidence. Prosecutors argued these conversations revealed far more than innocent relationship talk. As these recordings played in court, watch the reactions, the tension, as the jury hears these voices.
You may continue with publishing the next call.
Thank you, Judge. The next call is BB.
What happened? Somebody called my dad's office today looking for him, saying that they dropped off some paperwork to him. But, and there was a phone number on there, and it's actually the person Erica. And then Erica called my mom up because she's like, normally I wouldn't call you up, but I got a strange phone call.
Where's the phone number that they're calling from, though?
I can ask Erica, but Erica said, yeah, the name is Sandy. Called the office this morning saying that I left some paperwork with Dr. Adelson last week, and I left a number on there, and he needs to call me at that number.
No, somebody's like fucking police your bones and shit.
Well, this is the third.
Call the number. Call the number. They don't want to call on my fucking phone.
There's someone who wants you to call back. Let's put it that way. Do you still have the number?
Yeah, well, obviously that number, nobody picks me up.
Well,
That's not a working number. It's like an email number.
Nobody's calling away. I'm just asking you to find out who the fuck it is.
It's like,
Yeah.
get that number that's off of the thing, off of the number, off of the freaking, caller ID.
At the office?
Yeah, obviously. But this is like a fucking bullshit game.
Well, they're not coming out on foot, they're not writing letters, and they're not calling the office because they have nothing better to do.
Well, I don't know what to tell you because I called that number myself.
Okay, well, let's call that number again and find out what the fuck's going on.
And nobody picks up. And you just try another number and left a message.
Okay, well,
I'm trying to get whoever's threatening your family and helping you guys out. And trying to help you guys out, but it's like if they don't pick up, then what the fuck? It's like it's a fucking joke.
I understand that they fucking called this morning and they're waiting for the phone call. That's what I'm telling you. And since it's 3 times.
Number or whatever that is that's calling you or your
The
family,
305.
whatever it is.
6570. You have the number.
Exactly. That number is obviously it's like a non-working number.
Okay, can you find out?
Okay, and it's like I don't know how to understand. It's either somebody's pulling your phone, somebody is just harassing you, or somebody's trying to get something out of you.
Okay. Find out who the fuck it is, because the other phone call is going to be the FBI. I'm telling you. Well, I'm telling you, and then when they do catch the person, they're going to be asking lots of questions about who Katie is.
We already spoke about this. It's like not even like a fucking joke anymore, because obviously it's like somebody's fucking harassing you guys, or somebody's harassing and using my name, and it's like,
Okay, make it through. Find out who the fuck it is. That's all I'm asking.
no, I'm not going to take on my fucking cell phone because it's fucking bullshit. It's fucking somebody trying to fucking pinpoint some bullshit. Like it's getting aggravating.
Yeah, it is. All I'm saying is find out who the fuck it is and tell them to stop playing it. I don't know who you have to talk to, but it needs to be nipped in the bud.
No, man, I'm gonna handle this shit myself, bro. Because this is some fucking bullshit. I'm gonna handle it my motherfucking self. Well, change my motherfucking number. They fucking if Erica wants to call back and like, oh, is this the right number? Okay, I have your fucking whatever fucking shit taken care of. Okay, because this is fucking bullshit.
Find
I'm
out.
correct, bro. I'm about to go to that fucking FBI. I'm fucking getting irate with this shit already. It's either the FBI fucking playing games or fucking whatever it is because I'm fucking getting pissed.
Alright, go find out.
Get
I'm saying.
the wrong phone number. Maybe you're an idiot. You gave a fucking wrong number. Get the fucking number to fucking call because I'm gonna call them.
Okay.
And the fucking type to me, I don't even fucking give a shit about all this fucking coach shit, whatever shit anymore. I'm pissed the fuck off. Like, I'm gonna fucking go to the cops right now.
Okay, well, either you go to the cops or we go to the cops.
Exactly.
We'll find out.
We're both gonna fucking go to the cops because this is fucking bullshit.
We'll find out who the fuck this is. Because this person evidently knows you and knows your family.
Yeah,
They know me, they know my name.
You don't think they're not fucking scared of shit out of me? Like somebody fucking saying my name out loud or whatever?
If someone's messing with you, they're messing with me. If someone's messing with me, they're messing with you. It's one and the same. So what I'm saying is, find out who the fuck
That number doesn't
is.
fucking work. If you can get a hold, you go to different offices, call the motherfucking number. See if the fucking number works. Bottom line. Because I tried myself and that shit does not work.
Hey, call them, find out who the fuck it is now. Trust me on this. Find out who the fuck it is.
Get the number, listen to me, and get the number and something all of the things because it works for people. I'm not talking to your parents. You go fucking FBI. What else fucking doing this thing? And fucking go and fucking report whoever's harassing you. That's it.
Hey, I gotta get back to it. You have the number I gave you the other day.
I have the fucking number. I have
Okay,
told
good.
you.
Call it.
Listen, I called the number. This is not a working number.
Good.
Get the number that calls your fucking office. Listen to me for once.
I will. You're gonna call Erica.
Fucking A, bro. I'm gonna fucking fuck up whoever the fuck is fucking with me.
I'm going to call my mom and have my mom call
Get
your
that
office.
fucking number. Because some
Which number?
fucking parents, that number they call it, and that's not a working number. It's either somebody's playing you, Somebody's tapping into some shit, and somebody's just trying to fucking aggravate somebody.
Okay, let me
And I'm aggravated.
You want me to have Erica go on the caller ID and look to see what number that was that
It's a
called?
phony number. Obviously, you're calling from somewhere else, and it's not the same number that you say. How about you call and find that out?
Okay, do me a favor. Try that number I gave you the other day, and I'm going to call my mom and tell her to call Erica and ask her to look it up on the caller ID. Okay? But call me.
Whatever it is.
All right. Tension's rising a little bit.
A little bit. After all the evidence, testimony, arguments, and cross-examinations, the jury deliberated. And for Charlie Adelson, everything he'd built over a lifetime, his career, reputation, freedom, his entire future, rested on 12 strangers deciding whether they believed him or the prosecution's narrative of conspiracy and murder. The wait for a verdict is psychological torture. Time moves differently. Minutes feel like hours. You replay every moment, every answer on the stand, every expression when damaging evidence was presented, every time you made eye contact with a juror or looked away. You wonder if you should have testified differently, answered more carefully, shown more or less emotion. For Charlie's family, for Dan Markel's family, for Catherine Magbanua, already convicted in a separate trial, for everyone connected to this case, the waiting was agony. A verdict wouldn't just be about legal guilt. It would be about truth, justice, whether the system worked, whether years of investigation led to the right conclusion. When the jury sent word they'd reached a verdict, the courtroom filled quickly. Media, family members, legal observers, people who'd followed this case for years, all wanted to be there. The judge entered. The jury filed in. And in those seconds before the verdict was read, anything was possible. Charlie could walk free or spend life in prison. The foreperson stood. The verdict forms were handed to the judge, who reviewed them silently before handing them to the clerk to read aloud. And then came the words that would define the rest of Charlie Adelson's life. Guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Guilty of solicitation of first-degree murder. The word hung in the air. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of conspiracy. Guilty of solicitation. The jury had made their decision. They believed the prosecution's narrative. They believed the phone calls meant what prosecutors said they meant. They believed the money wasn't innocent generosity. They believed Charlie Adelson was part of a conspiracy to end Dan Markel's life. Charlie's reaction in that moment was captured forever. The confidence that had carried him through the investigation and trial seemed to drain away. This wasn't a setback he could explain away. This wasn't a question he could answer his way out of. This was reality, final and unforgiving. But even in that moment of devastating loss, Charlie had one more call to make, one more conversation that would reveal just how deeply this case had affected not just him, but his entire family. Hours after the verdict, Charlie was allowed to make a phone call from jail. He called his mother, Donna. What they said to each other in that moment, knowing they were being recorded, reveals the emotional weight of this case. Listen to the tone, the words chosen so carefully, the fear and love and desperation in their voices.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
Charlie.
an incarcerated individual at the Leon County Jail. This call is not private. It will be recorded and may be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To accept charges and consent to this recorded call, press 1.
Thank you for using Securus. You may start the
Charlie.
conversation now.
Charlie.
Hey. Hey there, how are you?
How are you?
Okay.
I'm alright.
Where are you? Are you still in that cell?
Yeah, I'm still in here. So the chief's gonna see me at some point today, and whenever he comes through, and then supposedly Dan's gonna come to the jail, and I asked them, they said when your attorneys get here, they'll take you out to see them. I'm sure I'll see them behind glass.
So I thought Dan. I didn't know that Dan went. I didn't know if he went home or not yesterday.
No, he's driving home today.
Okay. So so they will let you see him today.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be behind glass, so maybe picking up a phone, talking to him through a sheet of glass.
So, did you get sleep last night?
Yeah, on and off. I mean, they got the lights on. It's bright in here. It's like I just wanted to call and say hi. I don't even know why.
No,
that's okay.
I'm glad you did it. I was actually just talking to Dan, so it's not like we were sleeping.
Yeah.
But,
You were talking to Dad or Dan?
Dan.
It's cold.
Yeah, but, gonna have to talk when we have a moment about things that we need to take care of, okay?
Yeah, I know the money and stuff like that. No, I got you.
Roman.
What?
And I have things I need to take care of for Roman and ways that we can take care of him and help him. So there's that, which is the most important. And then and figuring out about the dog. So gotta take care of things, Charlie. We gotta take care of things.
It's like I'm dead. I mean, I hate to tell you this. It ain't a whole lot different. Oh, fuck.
I know. Please, I know.
Oh, fuck. I listen to everybody.
That phone call between Charlie and Donna was heartbreaking, regardless of guilt or innocence. A mother and son facing a reality neither wanted to accept. The conversation was careful, knowing it was recorded, but beneath the caution was genuine emotion. Fear, love, disbelief. Donna was later arrested and charged in connection with the conspiracy. She fled, was captured, and now faces trial. The Adelson family has been shattered. Harvey maintains his innocence and hasn't been charged. When he has never been charged and maintains she had no knowledge. And at the center, Dan Markel's children, who lost their father and watched their family torn apart. They're the innocent victims, children who will grow up with this legacy. Conviction brings finality to questions of guilt, but sentencing brings the full weight of reality. This is when abstract concepts like life in prison become concrete, when you understand that every day for the rest of your life will be spent behind bars. Charlie Adelson faced life in prison, and the sentencing hearing was his final chance to address the court, to say anything that might matter, to show remorse if he felt it, maintain innocence if that's what he believed, or simply be heard as a human being one last time. Sentencing hearings in murder cases carry emotional weight that's difficult to describe. Victim impact statements bring the loss into sharp focus. Dan Markel's family, his parents Ruth and Phil, had waited years for this moment. They'd sat through investigations, trials, delays. They'd lived with the absence of their son, with questions about why and how, with anger and grief. When they spoke, their words carried years of pain. They talked about Dan as their son, as a father, as a brilliant scholar. They talked about the hole his absence left, about grandchildren growing up without their father. They talked about the senselessness. Dan didn't deserve this. He was a good person who loved his children, dedicated his life to education and law. His murder wasn't random violence or tragic accident. According to the conviction, it was the result of calculated decisions by people who viewed him as expendable. The sentencing hearing brought everyone back to court one final time. Listen to the words spoken, the victim impact statements, the legal arguments, and Charlie's final moments before learning exactly what the rest of his life would look like.
Counts be run concurrently.
Very well. Mr. Adelson, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a statement if you wish. You do not have to speak. However, this is your opportunity if you choose to do so.
I do.
Very well. Please rise. I am now going to pronounce the sentence. As to count 2, you are going to be sentenced consecutively to 30 years in the Department of Corrections for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. As to count 3, you are going to be sentenced to 30 years in the Department of Corrections consecutively for solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The credit for time served that applies in this matter is how much?
597.
597 days will be applied as credit for time served in this case. If the clerk could please read all fees and costs that would apply as well.
$2,100 as a fine pursuant to Florida Statute 775.083, $105 as a 5% surcharge required by Florida Statute 938.04, $20 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.06, Crime Stopper Trust Fund, $3 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.01, subsection 1, Criminal Justice Trust Fund, $50 pursuant to Florida Statute 938.03, Crimes Compensation Trust Fund, $225 pursuant to Florida Statute 938.05, Local Government Criminal Justice Trust Fund, $2 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.15, County Criminal Justice Education, County Code 7-26, $50 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 775.083, subsection 2, County Crime Prevention, $3 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.19, Teen Florida Assessment, Leon County, Florida Code 7-28, $65 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 939.185, County Additional Court Cost, County Code 7-24, with a total of $2,623.
Mr. Rauschbaum, is there any lawful objection for you to raise to the assessment as announced by the clerk?
No, Your Honor.
Those amounts will be assessed at this time. Ms. Kappelman, I will reserve 90 days of jurisdiction to address the cost of prosecution in this case. By statute, the state is entitled to the 100, but this is in excess of the 100 is what you're referring to.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. 30 days to appeal both your conviction and now your sentence. Mr. Adelson, you are going to be fingerprinted today, and from here you are going to be sent to the Department of Corrections to begin serving your sentence. Mr. Rauschbaum, if you please can timely file the notice of appeal so that way there is no issues regarding any review of the conviction itself. Does either party have anything further to raise to the court before we finish for today?
Nothing from the state.
No, Your Honor.
We are in recess. Mr. and Mrs. Markel, have a good day. Thank you for being available so you can provide your victim impact statements. Have a good day.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Cheyenne, you can take this. This is the pre-sentence investigation information. Two count one.
The judge sentenced Charlie Adelson to life in prison without possibility of parole. 3 consecutive life sentences. No parole. No chance for release. This was final. In that moment, everything Charlie had built ended. The courtroom became the place where his freedom was permanently taken away. Dan Markel's family spoke at sentencing. They talked about the man they lost, the father, the son, the brilliant mind taken too soon. They talked about pain that never ends, justice that, while delivered, can never restore what was stolen. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. If Charlie Adelson did what prosecutors say, how does an educated, successful person convince themselves that hiring hitmen is acceptable? What psychological process allows someone to cross that line? And if he didn't do it, if this was circumstantial evidence and misinterpreted conversations, how do we reconcile the jury's unanimous decision with his protests of innocence? How do we explain all the connections, the timing, the money, the phone calls? These questions require us to think about how we evaluate evidence, how we judge intent, how we balance reasonable doubt with patterns of behavior. One undeniable aspect of this case is how much it relied on recordings. Phone calls, jail calls, undercover operations. In our modern age, very little is truly private. Charlie Adelson's case became a study in how words can be used against you, how context can transform innocent statements into evidence of guilt. It raises a broader question. In a world where everything can be recorded, how do we navigate that reality? For investigators, these tools are invaluable. They can build cases from conversations, track criminal activity, and present juries with evidence that's difficult to deny. But it also means we all live with less privacy, where our words have permanent records. Charlie Adelson is serving his life sentence in Florida. His appeals are ongoing. His legal team continues arguing wrongful conviction, that evidence was circumstantial, that the jury was swayed by narrative rather than proof. Donna Adelson awaits her own trial after being captured following her flight. Catherine Magbanua, Sigfrido Garcia, and Luis Rivera have all been convicted and sentenced, with Rivera receiving a reduced sentence for cooperation. Wendy Adelson has never been charged and maintains her innocence. Dan Markel's family continues to seek justice and keep his memory alive. This case leaves us with a story both specific and universal. It's about one family, one crime, one investigation. But it's also about broader themes. It's about how we judge truth when we only have evidence and testimony to guide us. It's about reconciling who someone appears to be with actions they're accused of taking. It's about family loyalty and how far it can stretch. It's about the justice system, whether juries can evaluate complex evidence, whether prosecutors construct valid narratives from circumstantial connections. And it's about consequences. Dan Markel is gone. His children grew up without their father. The Adelson family is fractured, lives destroyed. Charlie Adelson will spend his life in prison. The verdict is final. The sentence is served. And the questions remain. What if the conversations you have today, the choices you make when you think no one's watching, came back? What if they were played in a courtroom, analyzed, used to define who you are? That's the haunting reality of this story. In our modern world, very little stays hidden forever. The truth has a way of emerging. This has been Dark Trail Files. If this case made you think, question, or see how complex truth can be, subscribe and hit that notification bell. We have more stories that will challenge everything you know about justice and guilt. The Charlie Adelson case isn't over. Appeals continue. Public debate rages on. And the questions at its heart remain. Until next time, this is Dark Trail Files, where we don't just tell you what happened. We make you think about why it matters.